Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today is Monday, which means it's time for an episode of Loadout, the series where you guys, the viewers, get to pick a gun and customization for me to use. The way you do this is you leave a comment down below letting me know what kind of weapon and accessories you'd like me to run with, and I will pick one of the top rated comments for the next episode. Today's top comment comes from John Quester. He says the World War I loadout Gol Magnum with no attachments. M67 frag grenade, bayonet, knife, offensive field upgrade because of the extra grenades, don't use your sidearm, and no gadgets. Greetings from Germany. Now let's be honest, if you really want to play a World War I shooter, you can just go download Verdun on Steam. It's a pretty quality game all in all if World War I is your thing. But if you want to emulate World War I style combat in Battlefield, at least for yourself, then you can run with a bolt action and iron sights. I don't really know how well the Gol Magnum really represents any specific rifle from World War I, but I guess just about any rifle will do. And holy crap, the flip up iron sights on the Gol Magnum, not only do they look ridiculous, like the iron sights are sitting so much higher than I would expect to see an iron sight on any sort of bolt action rifle, but they're also just terrible for accuracy. Let me show you a freeze frame here of this rifle in mid shot as I'm about to get a headshot on this player. The actual front post is as wide as the entire body of the player, and he's not even that far away. So you can only imagine players who are even further away than this. It's almost impossible to be precise with this weapon. Not to mention the sights are zeroed for about 100 meters, so I still have to aim below my target, and since this gun is not going to be accurate at out to 100 meters with iron sights, it's going to be very hard to hit those shots most of the time, then I really don't have any point in zeroing it at 100 meters. It would be much more helpful if it was just zeroed at 0 or 50 meters or whatever. Now I'm starting to understand from a technical aspect why iron sights are rendered so horribly in Battlefield, and that's because we have no real perspective rendering of them. To better explain this perspective issue, let me show you some images from the pre-alpha game Squad. Here you can see an AK with iron sights rendered with the appropriate perspective enabled, and this makes the front post very, very small and very precise for hitting long-range targets. In this game I was accurately hitting people from hundreds of meters away just with the iron sights. And ironically, this game has the exact opposite issue that Battlefield has with red dot sights. Red dot sights are also rendered with perspective, which means you can also see the interior of the scope, whereas Battlefield renders red dot sights with more of an orthographic projection, which is a weird, complicated way of rendering something that's 3D with a 2D perspective, if that makes any sense. And I want to throw out there that Squad is still a game in pre-alpha, and that they're actually going to change the way that red dot sights are rendered in that game so that it probably looks a little bit more like Battlefield or something. I don't know, but I know it's not the final way that RDSs are going to look. I'll be making a video covering Squad soon. Okay, so it sounds like a lot of technical mumbo jumbo that I just covered right there, but basically the difference is that Battlefield renders optics with an orthographic projection. A lot of games do this, but they add a little bit of extra finesse in there to make it look better, more accurate. And Squad renders optics with an actual perspective, which is good for iron sights but bad for red dot sights. Now I think the best of both worlds is to basically use an orthographic perspective but change the model to make it represent real life perspective a little bit better. So rather than having this iron sight come up and have a massive front post, you would shrink down that front post and everything in front of the weapon to make it look more realistic and to make it look more like what you would actually see if you're really looking down an iron sight. Now other games like Call of Duty actually do a better job of iron sight rendering than Battlefield does, but that's because there's a lot of reason to use iron sights in Call of Duty, because you have a system where if you pick a red dot sight, it actually takes up some of the points that you can use for your loadout. So a lot of people are going to be using iron sights in that game just so they can have extra points to spend elsewhere in their kits. With Battlefield, you pretty much always have the option to put an optic on your weapon, so most people are running red dots all the time, so they didn't really have to spend a lot of time making the iron sights look good or make them more usable, which is really unfortunate because maybe people would use them more if they were actually rendered properly. Okay, but enough about video game design and optic rendering techniques. Let's get back to the actual loadout video here. Obviously, this kit is not going to be something that is really practical for doing well. I was able to actually score top of my team in a few servers, but it was mostly because my team was complete garbage, or I was just setting myself up in very cheap situations to get lots of kills. Rush is the game mode that you would want to try this out on. It doesn't make a lot of sense in any other game mode. You basically need a situation where you can set yourself up for some easy kills where people are not shooting back at you. most of the targets I killed either had to be a one-shot headshot, and if I was getting 2 shots for a body shot, I really just didn't have the time to hit a follow-up shot in most cases. So you just had to go for the headshot or get lucky or hope that they had already been damaged by your teammates. Now the Gol Magnum used to be a pretty darn good sniper rifle. I think it got nerfed recently though, just because looking over the stats right now, I'm like, yeah, this isn't that great of a sniper rifle anymore. The muzzle velocity isn't particularly impressive, which certainly doesn't help with iron sights and trying to lead at targets from further away. It's just very, very hard to lead targets with a massive iron sight post. I mean, when you're leading targets with like an 8x scope, sometimes I'll just lead by an inch in front of the target, or I'll just aim at the front side of the soldier while they're sprinting, and that's enough to get a hit on them. But with iron sights, you just can't even be that precise. You just kind of have to guess and hope that you got the shot. Now, I did try out some TDM gameplay, and it was way harder playing this loadout than it was on Rush. At least in Rush, you don't have to worry about your flanks as much. The enemy is usually coming from one general direction, and you can set yourself up pretty well to get some kills, or at least to get into some firefights where you're not constantly whipping around and trying to get clutch shots. In TDM though, you don't know where the enemy is going to be coming from, so you gotta hit your shots, otherwise you're pretty much screwed if somebody figures out where you're shooting from. And because of the iron sight issue with this gun not being very viable as a long range weapon, we've now got a situation where you kind of have to force yourself into sort of a medium range engagement distance, because CQB isn't really that viable. It used to be back in, I don't know, Bad Company 2, when you could still get those one-shot kills in close quarters, but ever since the defensive perk came into this game and people could withstand those bolt-action sniper rifle shots, they just are not viable as the aggressive recon player. But who knows, maybe the aggressive recon playstyle will come back in a future Battlefield game where defensive perk is no longer a thing. Who knows, maybe the next Battlefield game will be based in the World War II era of combat, and there won't even be any sort of body armor available to you. So defensive perk could just go away because we're switching eras entirely. We'll have to wait and see. I'm pretty excited though about the future of it, and in the meantime, Battlefront looks pretty badass as well. That does pretty much wrap it up for this episode of Loadout. Don't forget to leave your comments down below, and let's keep them more tactical this time around. I did pick this loadout because it had a crap ton of upvotes, but next time around I'm picking something that has some sort of tactical viability, not necessarily just a themed loadout. As always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.